Thank you, David. So first, I would like to thank the organizer, my friend David, Gil, and Marla. So I will try to give you an overview of the evolution of IBD management, what I have seen during the last basically 40 years. These are my conflict of interest. So this is my outline. I will talk about the new goals of management. What are our therapeutic strategies today, tomorrow? And I would like to start a discussion with you regarding how can we do better. So this is a slide that you have seen a lot of time that we drew with my late friend Mark Lehmann, which I think has completely changed the view that we have of IBD. In the past, we were thinking it was an intermittent disease with flares and remission, and we missed the point that, like rheumatoid arthritis, IBD are progressive diseases. And as soon as you have a flare, you are accumulating damage to the gut, leading to complications such as in Crohn, fistula, and abscesses, and surgery. So IBD are progressive. And not only we need to treat the symptoms and improve quality of life, but the ultimate goal now is basically to cut the natural history of the disease, and early intervention is key, so that basically you will be able to prevent bowel damage and disability. It looks very simple, but these few slides to me have completely changed the paradigm of treatment of IBD. IBD, you need to think in the long term, and this is your goal. You need to think, this patient will live for many, many years. I want to prevent damage, bowel damage, like bone damage in rheumatoid arthritis and disability. So what are the therapeutic strategies that we should apply today in order to do so? These are my 3 pillars of IBD care. I believe that we have enough drugs to treat IBD in July 2019. The only point is that these drugs are not well used. And if you apply those 3 pillars, you would be able to control 80% at least of patients with IBD. These 3 pillars are early, treat to target, and I will talk about that, and the concept of tight control. And of course, you need to involve the patient to communicate with him about your goals. So this is a slide a little bit complicated, just to make the point that regarding all medications that we have so far, it's very clear that if you treat early, and in that case, this meta-analysis was done less than 2 years after diagnosis as compared to more than 2 years, the results of the medications are much better. This is true for our old drugs, this is true for our newest drug, including P19 antibodies, including JAK inhibitors, everything. If you treat early, the results are better. So it's not working anymore. No, it's not advancing the slide, please. No, this is not correct. Could you go back? Back. I don't know what's going on. Huh? Okay, next slide. Okay, the second concept is a concept of treat to target. So what is treat to target? Treat to target is very simple. The aim is to avoid the development of complications, again, blocking the natural history. The concept is that you need to predefine, when you are facing your patients, a target associated with the best long-term outcome. The strategy will be using monitoring of the targets, and as soon as you have not reached the target, as long as you have not reached the target, then you need to optimize. Of course, the components of the target may vary according to patients, and if you are able to reach the target, I will not discuss that today, but we are working a lot on that. Maybe de-escalation can be foreseen. So, in a nutshell, a treat-to-target approach, predefining a treatment target in consultation with the patients, monitoring and modify the treatment until the target is reached. The target in IBD in July 2019 is clinical and endoscopic remission. This is true both in Crohn's disease and ulcerative colitis. This is, to me, the most influential paper that has been published in the last 40 years by a genius named Sander van Deventer. This paper made the cover of Gastroenterology in 1995 because he was the first able to show that you are able to induce endoscopic healing in IBD. This was in Crohn's with an anti-TNF. This slide has completely changed our view of the treatment of Crohn's disease. The third concept is a concept of tight control. What does that mean? That means that you need to follow your patients in a tight way using clinical data and biomarkers. This was well demonstrated in the prospective CALM study where we randomized patients very early to a follow-up using only clinical symptoms as compared to follow-up using clinical symptoms, CRP, and calprotectin. I will not spend too much time on this study because I'm pretty sure you know it quite well. The principle was to escalate the therapy if the patient was doing well, if the biomarker were elevated in the tight control arm, as compared to the control arm where we escalated only if the patient was not doing well. And the results were overwhelming. The primary endpoint, which was endoscopic remission, was reached in 46% of patients in the tight control as compared to 30%. And a very important secondary endpoint, deep remission, which is clinical and endoscopic remission, which is our target, 36% as compared to 25%. The question then that we ask at the end of CALM, does it matter for the long term? Does it matter to reach this endpoint to block the progression of the disease? And the answer is yes. This is the follow-up data of CALM, where we were able to show that patients who are in deep remission at 1 year, this is a green curve, were not progressing over 3 years. No complications, no fistula almost, no surgeries as compared to those patients who are not able to reach this endpoint. So this is a kind of proof of concept, even though it's post-hoc analysis of these three principles, early, treat to target, and tight control. We can block the progression of the disease. So in order to do so, this is a kind of summary of the tight control algorithm. You have a patient, you need to be certain that this patient is active based on objective criteria. Then you treat, you monitor based on symptoms and on biomarker. Then you assess your target between 6 and 1 year. It's not written in stone, which should be clinical and endoscopy. And if you have reached your target, then it's fine. You can maintain your patients. If you are not reached your target, then you need to optimize. I can tell you if you are adapting this algorithm in early patients, you will control almost all your patients. What are the therapeutic strategies tomorrow? We need to go further. In UC, there is a huge interest right now in going beyond endoscopic remission and to histological remission. And this is feasible. David mentioned the VARSITY trial, which was a head-to-head study, adalimumab versus vedolizumab. And as you can see, if you look at the Robarts index, which is an index of histologic activity, it's feasible in 40% of cases to now reach histological remission. So should histological remission be the next endpoint, the next target in ulcerative colitis? There are data from Chicago, especially from David, and also from UK. This is a slide from UK, showing that if you are able to reach endoscopic and histological remission, this is better than endoscopic remission enough only as compared to hospitalization, for instance, and you can see the difference here between clinical, endoscopic, and histologic. So is it time to revise the STRIDE guidelines? It's still not done, and we have started a prospective study where we will treat patients to symptoms, to endoscopy, or to histology. This is the only way to answer these very difficult questions. Right now, I think you should still be guided by endoscopy instead of histology. I will not discuss that so much because Marla will talk about that. There is a huge controversy about proactive versus retroactive, reactive monitoring. We have now three negative prospective studies showing that proactive monitoring was not doing better than clinical monitoring. There is one small positive trial in kids, but it's still unknown, you know, and this is the best data actually so far, which are not randomized. This is experience from Adam Scheifertz, where in his center, some patients were treated according to proactive monitoring, meaning that if the levels were going down, they were escalated, even though the patient was doing well, as compared to reactive monitoring. And as you can see on the right-hand side, as far as the cumulative probability of treatment failure, the proactive group was doing better. But I must say this is still debated. There is a huge interest in proactive monitoring with imaging. And for instance, you can imagine that in a high-risk patient, we should monitor patients much more closely. For instance, with colonoscopy and with cross-sectional imaging as compared to the not high-risk patient. But you will tell me we can't repeat colonoscopy or MRI every 3 months. This is where there is a huge and growing interest in ultrasonography. US is trailing behind. I can tell you that my European friends are doing that daily. They are doing point-of-care ultrasound in disease activity assessments. And you can perfectly assess the different layers of the bowel wall. And it's a point of care. You can do that at the bed of the patients. So we are trailing behind, and with David, we are trying to push the implementation of ultrasonography as a point of care in disease monitoring in the US. It's very easy, radiation-free, no prep, low cost, and you can perform it. So how can we do better? How can we do better and basically reach maybe our goal, which is a cure? In the short term, I believe the most important is to fill the gap between what we say, what I'm telling you today, and what is done in clinical practice. The gap is huge. And for instance, this is a recent study from Scandinavia, showing that actually, surprisingly, it's a paper published in Gut last month, introduction of anti-TNF therapy didn't lead in a decline in hospitalization and surgery. This is very surprising. But why? When you look at the paper, and this is quoted by authors, there was a misguided use of infliximab. Again, anti-TNF were introduced very late in the course of the patients. And this is all about that. And we need to push for early intervention, and we need also to have this multidisciplinary collaboration. I believe in this concept of holistic care of the patients, and to have this hybrid home that, for instance, Miguel has built. I guess this is one of his slides, and we have the same in Sinai, where you have the doctors, where you have the surgeon, you have the dietitian, you have the social worker, you have the psychologist, and then you can provide the best care of the patient from the beginning. So, to summarize what I really think the most impactful improvement in patients, maybe it's provocative, outcomes in the next 10 years will not come from any biomedical research. They will come from changing the human behavior, including what doctors are doing, what patients are thinking, and also insurances, especially in the US. So how can we do better in the midterm? It's all about personalization. Can one determine a prognosis to help identify what the best strategies for all those patients? The green patients on the left side, it doesn't merit a very intensive treatment from the beginning. maybe nothing, or maybe slow step up. While the red patient on the right, you need to treat him as intensive as possible from the beginning. And how can you guess? What you are using so far is what is on the left, your clinical nose. This is mine. This is what you are doing every day, I'm certain, because you have seen so many patients. You can guess, you believe you can guess. But we need to refine, and there are a lot of studies going on to find good predictors which are more accurate. For instance, there is a very interesting study from UK where they are using gene expression profiling of CD8 T cells, and it's a blood test, and you can guess what will be the prognosis of the patients. And they have started this very interesting profile trial where, just in a nutshell, they will randomize patients based on low risk and high risk, and then see if this profiling makes sense and if you can improve the care of IBD made on this profiling, this early profiling at diagnosis. This is very important as well. We need to personalize the drugs that we are giving to one patient. As David was saying, one patient may respond to an anti-TNF, one to ustekinumab, one patient may respond to a JAK inhibitor. We don't know. We don't know, because very often, actually, we don't know exactly the mechanism of action. And this is what should be done. We need to stratify patients according to pathway-specific drugs. There are a lot of studies looking at that, so that you can choose mechanism of action 1, and then if it doesn't work, you will switch, and so on and so forth. Right now, we are just guessing. So there are a lot of studies going, and for instance, these are some predictors of anti-TNF non-response, clinical predictors on the left, and more sophisticated predictors on the right based on intestinal tissue gene expression. There are even more now, such as oncostatin, IL-32, and so on and so forth. So far, nothing is ready for prime time, but there are a lot of ongoing studies, also with all medications. Combining biologics is also a very interesting approach. This has been done a lot in rheumatology, in dermatology, and we have just started to do that in IBD, doing a combining study, combining vedolizumab plus adalimumab in patients with early severe Crohn's disease. And also we need to target more than the immunome, which is on the right side, on the bottom. Maybe we need to target the environment and the microbiome. And I'm very happy to see in the last issue of Gastroenterology the first well-done study of dietary therapy. This is a CDED diet associated with partial enteral nutrition versus exclusive enteral nutrition, and this study was positive. And we need much more studies like that. Maybe diet intervention works, but it has to be tested as well as a drug. And so far, we have very weak data about diets. So finally, in the long term, I believe, I'm not sure I believe anymore in cure, because when you have started a drug, it's very difficult to stop. I believe maybe more in prevention. As illustrated in this slide, there is a phase, a preclinical phase in all immune-mediated diseases, before the first symptom. And if you can catch this phase, maybe then you can prevent the disease. And this is just some data that we have from the PREDICT studies that we did with the US Army. To make a long story short, we have a lot of serum that have been collected from recruits years before the onset of the disease. And using some antimicrobial marker, you can see the area under curve of prediction, which is quite nice. And same for some proteomic markers. And we have much more data now coming. I think we should be able soon to predict Crohn's disease up to 5 years before diagnosis and maybe to prevent. To conclude, the goals of treatment have changed from symptoms to blocking disease progression. Please think about these 3 pillars of optimal care: early, treat to target, and tight controls, knowing that the target may evolve. Personalization, everybody is talking about it, but I think it's still the future. We need prospective study. And what is needed today, especially in this country, I must say, even more than in Europe, is to fill the gap between the care which is given in specialized center and what is done in real life, which doesn't fit at all with what I have presented today. Thank you.